There's a pretty basic rule that applies to, well, everything really, but especially cars, and that is, a new model will be at its most popular when it's first released. Makes sense, right? Everyone wants the latest and greatest, and then that popularity fades over time. So why, after more than 10 years on sale, is the Nissan Patrol selling in record numbers? Clearly, this is something that warrants closer investigation. I'm not kidding. Nissan sold 3 times as many Patrols last year as it did in 2014, its first full year on sale, and it's on track to do a similar number in 2023. I'm also not kidding regarding the Patrol's age. The Y62 arrived in Australia in 2013, but it was actually launched in Abu Dhabi in February 2010, so this thing is now a teenager. And yet, it's still a baby by Patrol standards. Its Y61 predecessor was on sale for 20 years, and actually sold alongside the Y62 for quite a while. The reason for this is that it's easy to forget just what a controversial car this was when it was first launched. The Y61 was a heartland off-road wagon. Petrol or turbo diesel, manual or auto, and even the top-spec Ti Auto was just over 70 grand. In contrast, the Y62 was petrol V8 and automatic only, and started at more than $80,000, rising to more than $115,000 for the flagship. Viewed in that context, 95 grand plus on-road costs for this latest Ti-L actually looks reasonably good value. What aren't a bargain are the Patrol's running costs. No real surprise given what it is. Nissan's warranty is competitive, but you're looking at around $600 per service over the first 6 visits, and they're needed every 10,000 Ks, or every 12 months if you don't do much driving. The Patrol got an update in 2022, though that's stretching the definition of the term to absolute breaking point. This Ti-L got a new logo and a new fender vent design. That's it. Its last proper update was 2019, where it scored the new LED lights, different bumper design and different alloy wheel design, as well as a heap of extra safety equipment. The only other thing to really mention here is the Patrol's sheer size. It's 5.2 metres long, 2 metres wide without mirrors, and almost 2 metres tall, so make sure you've got a big garage. Here's what got everybody so fired up back in 2013. The only engine is a 5.6 litre petrol V8 with a 7-speed automatic. The outputs are more muscle car than off-roader with 298 kilowatts and 560 newton metres. And as for the fuel usage, don't ask. Seriously, don't. If you care at all about fuel economy, do not buy a Nissan Patrol. It has a 140 litre tank and needs at least 95 RON, so it'll empty your wallet in $300 chunks at pretty regular intervals, as you can expect between 15 and 20 litres per 100k. On the plus side, size of the tank means you'll still get decent range even if you're off-road or towing. The interior of the Nissan Patrol has a really neat trick. It can take you back in time. Suddenly, I'm 25 again, though sadly can't make my hair grow back. Even by the standards of the day, it was questionable. The masses of plastic, wood and ruched leather, clearly designed to appeal to a very specific sort of market that wasn't necessarily Australia. It's all pretty tacky and there are a million buttons, but there is at least loads of equipment. Heated and cooled seats, electric steering column, triple zone climate control, 13 speaker Bose stereo, memory driver's seat, keyless entry and start, and a massive fridge in the centre console. Nevertheless, you do sit weirdly high, and there are a couple of obvious reminders of the Patrol's vintage, namely the foot-operated park brake, and, this is my favourite, there's no smartphone mirroring, so you plug your phone in and you think, I'll select USB, but no, you select iPod, unless by some miracle you've kept your CD collection. As mentioned, there is no smartphone mirroring of any kind, nor any digital radio, just ancient sat-nav, though there is at least Bluetooth audio streaming. Now, it might sound like I'm picking on the Paw Patrol, but it doesn't have to be this way. There are a couple of different interiors available overseas in the updated Patrol or the US spec Armada, which have bigger screens and more modern features, but presumably didn't make sense to apply these updates to right-hand drive models, which is a shame. The Patrol has the basic active safety equipment thanks to its 2019 update, but it certainly isn't comprehensive. The Patrol has multiple exterior camera views, albeit quite low resolution, as well as front and rear parking sensors. As you'd hope in a vehicle the size of a small house, there is stacks of room here in the second row, seats recline nicely, and there are plenty of toys. We've got separate aircon controls, 3 USB-A ports, a 12-volt outlet, HDMI input for the rear TV screens. And now these might not be as relevant as they once were now that everyone's got iPads, but then again, These can't be dropped and broken, they can't run out of charge, and each side has its own headphone input and volume control. And now kids, here's a tip as well. If mum and dad are hogging all the snacks and drinks, know that the fridge opens from the back as well as the front. The third row is less impressive. Access isn't too bad thanks to the second row's ability to fly out of the way at the pull of a lever, but once you're back here, it's pretty squishy, and besides a couple of cup holders on each side, there's no real features to speak of, though there is a top tether on the driver's side to install a baby seat if necessary. Another thing to note is that the lower spec Ti is an 8-seater, whereas the Ti-L only has 7. So to be honest, I'm not sure you'd want 3 people, even kids, across the back here. Behind the electric tailgate, you'll find a very decent boot by 7-seater standards, and fold the third row, and it expands considerably, though make sure the headrests are all the way down, otherwise they'll catch on the back of the centre row. We've also got a little cubby hole here beneath the floor, as the full-size spare wheel is underneath the car. Now let's see how the Patrol stacks up behind the wheel after all these years. You might expect this thing to be a lumbering elephant of a car. It's old, it's huge, and it weighs almost 3 tonnes, but it just isn't the case. Its size can cause a few issues around town. It doesn't really fit in your typical car space, for instance, at least not if you actually want to open the doors. However, that aside, there's not really much to complain about. You sit up high and there's big windows in every direction, so vision is no problem. The steering is light, the ride is perfectly acceptable. The dampers were retuned as part of that 2019 update, so it's really pretty good to drive. Another thing to mention, it's difficult to argue that the absence of safety technology is a good thing. However, I must admit it's refreshing to drive a car that isn't constantly beeping and flashing at you and tweaking the steering this way and that. You just get to drive uninterrupted. That said, if you need a big SUV purely for urban duties, don't get a Patrol. Get a Hyundai Palisade or something instead. But if you do need or want a Patrol for its other attributes, rest assured you're not left with a car that's dreadful to drive day to day, just a little bit oversized. Those attributes I mentioned, the first is the ability to tow really big stuff. Now I'm not going to go into towing in detail here, but if you go to carsales.com.au, you'll find a tow test with the Patrol, and basically it tows really well. Thirsty, obviously, though not as bad as you might imagine, and a bit soft in the rear, but it can haul 3,000 kilograms or more, no dramas whatsoever. The other attribute is the ability to go off-road, and we'll get there. But first, let's start with some more typical unsealed stuff. And on roads like this, the Patrol is, well, it's great. The engine is beautiful. It's funny that when this car first came out, the V8 was controversial, whereas now, probably the car's biggest selling point. It's smooth, powerful, torquey, and makes a great noise. Patrol shouldn't be this mobile. I mean, it weighs 2,861 kilograms, but it's balanced and pretty accurate. The steering is too light and pretty numb, but it can still point the car where you need it to go, and the suspension provides a good compromise. It soaks up potholes and bumps with ease, and if you hit a series of humps that can easily get suspension out of phase and have the car lurching and heaving, as long as you're not going too quickly, it keeps its weight in check really well. Part of the reason the Patrol's chassis impresses is it has hydraulically interlinked suspension. So this allows it to be softer in a straight line for greater comfort, yet as the vehicle rolls, the hydraulic system counteracts the lateral force to keep the car more stable. A couple of other cars with a similar system, the Audi RS6 and McLaren 720S. Now for the rough stuff. The Y62 Patrol might have gone upmarket, but hasn't abandoned its roots, as still got plenty of off-road ability. Doesn't have air suspension, but then with 273mm of ground clearance, it doesn't really need it, as that's the same as a Ford Ranger Raptor. Approach and departure angles aren't too bad. There's plenty of wheel articulation thanks to the all-independent suspension. I've got low-range gearbox, hill descent control, locking rear diff, as well as 4 drive modes: road, snow, sand and rock, which adjust stability control and throttle response and all that sort of stuff. As ever, the limiting factor of any standard off-road vehicle is its tyres. The Patrol's all-terrains are pretty good on the road. They work good on the gravel, but are pretty sketchy in the mud. So anyone considering regular, serious off-road work should definitely budget for a more aggressive set of rubber. That said, it's still more than capable enough, I think, in standard guise for most people's off-road needs, and certainly not breaking a sweat with anything I'm attempting today. It's easy to make fun of the Nissan Patrol. Its interior design and technology offering are laughably off the pace by contemporary standards, and the fuel thirst is more 1973 than 2023. However, the sales figures don't lie, and it's easy to see why the Patrol is so popular. It's got the grunt to tow, the space to accommodate the family with ease, it drives well on-road and is more than capable off it. Obviously, its key rival is the Toyota Land Cruiser, but you're only going to get a base GX for the same price as this Ti-L. Nissan's problem will be figuring out how to replace it, but for now, it's understandably cashing in. Thanks for watching.